Hello friends, what is up? It is Mina and welcome to another video on this YouTube channel. If you are new here, I am a practitioner. I delve in the energies of magic and healing and energy work. I have certain spirit guides and teams that I work with to manifest certain goals that I have, and also to just create better resonance and frequency on this planet. And then in my muggle everyday life, I am in leadership, and so I am a manager for a software tech company. I work hybrid remote, so I get to be at home most of the time. I lead a team of 12 individuals, and I implement some of what I'm passionate about within both energies of my life. I'm also a cat mom. I love to garden. I love to be in the space of nature and herbalism. So all of those energies will be part of the picture that is within this space. I have struggled making content online. I've really struggled with what that looks like, why I'm doing it, and making sure that it's for the right reasons, and making sure that my goal is ultimately something that can be consistent across time and space. So it has definitely been an evolved process over the years. Recently, through journaling, because I am an avid journaler, I do a lot of journaling. It is something that I incorporate some of my manifestation practice within my journals and such. But, through some of that space, I have really just settled with the realization that the content that I share online, I want to always be from a place of hobby and passion. This is a hobby of mine and a passion of mine, and so I share from that place and just to hold conversation. I know that as practitioners, oftentimes we find ourselves lamenting over the past. In any decade, in any year, you can find us saying, "Oh, I remember when YouTube was more of like that blogger vlog community," or, "Oh, I remember when, I was part of XYZ tradition and, we had so much more in-person participation than we do now." And we can find ourselves often lamenting the past in that capacity. One of the things that I find to be super beneficial for my individual practice, and I would say it has been a struggle to incorporate in public magical spaces, but it's something that I'm constantly trying to find harmony and alignment with. So what I do is I bring a lot of the leadership styles. I bring a lot of like the self-help and self-mastery, life success, business success, structure, discipline, routines, systems, some of these energies that we hear about in leadership circles, in corporate circles. We hear the methodology of the thing, and it can really apply to different energies within our lives as long as our aim and focus is true within that aspect. And so some of those conversations I'll definitely apply to how I approach community mostly, right? So community in general, community online, community in person. And I've seen both sides of the coin and realized some of the frustration and stress that practitioners tend to encounter within magical spaces. If you are a practitioner especially, then you will understand that sometimes it can be frustrating when people approach you with the energy of, "I wish things were," or with the energy of victimhood, disempowerment, complaining, blame, gossip. It can also be challenging when seekers come to us in a space of give me the answer versus show me where I can develop into this practitioner that I'm trying to become. And so one of our greatest opportunities, and I have said this across channels over the years, this is my primary channel going forward. I pretty much only post on YouTube and Facebook. That's really it. But I've said it across so many platforms that our biggest opportunity as practitioners is empathy. It's curiosity. It's humility. Some of those energies seem to be our biggest opportunities. You know, I come across a lot of content from other practitioners, and I see very bold, very powerful statements coming from practitioners, you know, where they are very righteous, I would say, in their convictions, in their methodologies, in their practices, in their beliefs. And I understand that. I understand that, you know, certain practitioners might feel a sense of loyalty to a certain subject or cause or issue that arises. And, you know, they gather their arms and pull out their verbal weapons as they stand their ground, you know, in certain conversations that we see, both in person and online. But what I don't often see is empathy. I don't often see, you know, to the querent, I'm talking outside of paid, right? Just community energy. So with the commentator or the commenter or the person asking the question or the person complaining or being in victim mindset and some of those things, I don't really see a lot of empathy. I don't really see a lot of, you know, it does suck that things aren't the way that they used to be. And I totally understand why, you know, when we talk about this subject or we revisit these certain memories, why it is so, you know, why we feel torn, why we're like, oh, I miss those times, you know, I miss those days, you know, and it's not as good as it was, you know, and I can see where you would feel that way, you know, and showing empathy to an outsider from our craft isn't a betrayal to our tradition. It's not a betrayal to our deities. It's not a betrayal to our spirit team or anything like that. It's lowering the walls and the guards of our energy field to be more in the space of collaboration and community and less in the space of walled up, guarded, us versus them, keep your distance, solitary practitioner vibe. And these are just observations, right? You know, I'm not out here trying to poo-poo on other people, but my aim all the time is holding space for conversations to find greater alignment, greater ways for us to evolve, and involve ourselves in community space, you know, and to bridge the distance that we have with each other. We don't have to be the same. We don't have to practice the same. We don't have to have the same access or power or levels with certain things. So I would love to see more of that. I wish that I did see more of that. And I'm sure that in spaces that perhaps I am not in, there are those conversations happening. But I think that it can be very easy for us to harden ourselves. Sometimes being a practitioner, especially if you do so in a space where you are offering service to others, can be very thankless work. It can be It can be really hard work because sometimes you have to delicately give challenging conversations to people who are approaching you in a time of desperation, who are approaching you in a space of victimhood while seeking confirmation bias answers that validate their disempowered beliefs. And so we find ourselves in sometimes challenging space to remain empathetic, to remain kind and curious, and to come back from a space of channeled love-centered energy. So it's totally valid, and there have been times where I have watched crafters and creators and podcasters and shop owners slowly lose the light of their eyes, the light behind their eyes of kindness and community, and become more jaded and more hardened and more judgmental and dismissive to those coming into their space to partake of their space. And I think that having solid boundaries on whatever that looks like for the individual is helpful, right? If we're in a space that's constantly taking more than it's giving to us, we need to think about what that looks like for our lives. We need to think about how much we can invest in that space, when and how we can invest in that space, and what our aftercare, what our self-nourishment, our revitalization looks like after being in that space. I personally have flirted with the ideas of being in magical service space for a profession off and on throughout my life. And it's gotten to a point, especially in modern days, where I just pull more and more away from that space. I would like to shift more into group working space. I think that would be better for me in general, but it is something that I've struggled with a lot as people, they're approaching from a wounded place sometimes, coupled with this curious energy, this desire for more empowerment and sovereignty and healed wholeness. And it can be a lot when it approaches those of us who are constantly in space to be the space holder, to be the healer, the facilitator, the practitioner, the channel between Gaia and the divine. So finding that balance, right? And it's just something that I feel limits our community from really, really thriving. I feel like it limits us from really being open-armed, welcoming, kind of like that fellowship vibe of like, hey, we're not missionaries, we're not religious, but obviously, we want to be in safe space and we want to welcome in community to those who find themselves drawn to similar paths, and so being in a space more of empathy, more of kindness, more of curiosity, not as a way to, try to discredit ourselves. And I think that that's sometimes why we see so much of this energy, because we're almost in competition with each other. Where it's like, if I show you curiosity, will it make me be perceived as a novice and somebody that doesn't know what they're doing? I would say no. But at the end of the day, I just want to remind us all that it's up to each individual path and journey to be that change. If you're somebody who isn't happy with the way that something is currently going, whether that is what you're seeing in your home tradition, or, missing how things were, or, seeing ugliness in the community. We have to choose to be that change. And being the change can look one of two ways. It can either look like you being the initiator of that change. So I'm not happy with this community, or I'm not happy that there was something in the past I loved, and I'm not experiencing that anymore. You could be the initiator by deciding to set out on a quest to create in modern time, whatever that looks like to you. Be adventurous, dream it up, and embark in this dance with the Lord and Lady, with the universe and your spirit guides to create this from a place of well-intentioned emotions and magic. All things will be manifest as they are aligned, right? Or if you are not really in a space to be the initiator, be the participant. Look for what is most closely aligned and closely available based on what your time, capacity, and location is. Are you really wanting something in person, or are you okay with something online? Do you really only have space for something like once a month? Or do you want consistent conversation and activity? And then look for something that's available based on your parameters. It might not be perfect, but if you are in the space of the participant and the seeker, also coupled with gratitude, you will find yourself aligned with what is best available to you. Does that mean that it'll be its forever situation? Probably not. But even if you were choosing to be the initiator, there has to be space for conflict. There has to be space for, things not going perfectly. This is how we learn and grow. So it's never, ever going to be perfectly aligned, where there's never conflict or issue or disagreement, but learning how we can lead with humility, and we can be empathetic and curious, and open up space for vulnerable conversation in order to find compromise or resolution, whatever that looks like, depending on the space and the category, issue, situation, what have you. That's really where it's at. That's really where it's at. And it's something that I've been thinking about in my own life, and I think about when I come across situations in the community where I see that we're responding from a place of defensiveness, dismissiveness, and hardened hearts. And, if you are comfortable to live in your cottage, in the forest, all by yourself, that's fine. And you can achieve great things just in a space of one. But if you want to challenge yourself to find resonance in community space, which is where the most magic and growth happens, with more than one practitioner engaged in the same ritual, the same workings, that is where true transformation happens at a greater, quicker level. Just as a reminder, as we wrap this conversation up, we are in a time where quick manifestation is happening. I'm not sure if this is a shift to universal law and the time frame that something takes to manifest, but I'm seeing it happen in real time a lot lately. You know, where I'll think about something that I would like to happen, whether it's on a conscious or subconscious level, and I don't focus on it very long, and it's really just kind of like a very minor trance state. Like you're thinking about something, oh, I really wish it would happen this way, or I wish that this would happen, kind of daydreaming for a moment, but it dips into that liminal space and it manifests. I have seen this happen probably like 3 times in an area that's more obvious than it has been previously within the last week. So this has been a conversation from practitioners and channelers and psychics across the tube of the U. So let me know if that's something that you're experiencing as well. I would love to hear your thoughts, friend. So if you have anything to share, if you have any questions or a story that you would like to share within this space, then that comment section, as always, is at your disposal. If you would prefer to remain anonymous, I have my email address listed there as well, and you can share your thoughts via email instead. Any which way to get a hold of me further will be down in that description box, but I'm not really holding space for individual anything right now. I'm recalibrating for 2026. 2026 is a 1 year. It's a great time to focus on, the aces, starting over. What does this next 9-year cycle look like? And so instead of manifesting for other, I'm really focusing this year on creating magical systems and routines that really nourish self. And then 2027, we can start to share that out with other. And I think that that's going to be the most aligned thing for my individual journey, to keep my sights set true on what's best for me and how I can recalibrate and come back to center and be in a healthy place while holding space for curiosity, empathy, understanding, collaboration, compromise, and all these things for other people, other practitioners, other querents, etc. So thank you so much for being present for this video. If you would love to be part of our baby community, because I just started this YouTube channel. Gosh, I don't even know when I started it. Then don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with videos as they come out. Stay wild and spooky, friends, but most of all, stay magical. This is Mina, and I will talk to you again. Until then, take care.